Welcome to Walt's Cheeky Bar. My name is Linda Wallin, and I have the pleasure today to share some of the history of Walt's 100-year traditions. My connection to the family began when I married Tom Wallin in 1975. Later on today, you will hear from our three children, Brett, Tommy, and Megan. And now, on to the history lesson. The Walt's family tradition began when a young boy named Claes Wallin emigrated from Sweden to Indiana with his family in the early 1900s. Claes soon tired of the Indiana farm life. Well, have you ever heard the story or read in books about when the circus comes to town and the young children run away with the circus? Well, that's exactly what Claes did. He hopped on the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey circus train and ended up in Sarasota, Florida, where they have their winter quarters. Well, it wasn't long after that when Claes met Irene Gallagher, who was to become the love of his life. Well, Irene had a brother named Jesse, and Claes and Jesse became fast friends. Jesse was a legendary fisherman of the time, and under his tutelage, Claes soon became a legend of his own. The two men sold their bountiful catch from Whitaker Bayou, which was a small fish camp, and the tradition of what was to become Walt's Fish Market and Restaurant was begun. Claes's son Walt joined his father in the fishing business as a young boy. Sarasota was a well-known fishing village, a little different than it is today. Well, they continued in the commercial fishing business together until Walt was called to serve his country in World War II. His ability as a commercial fisherman really landed him the job of driving the Navy landing crafts on the shores of Normandy. Quite a sight, as you can all recall. When Walt returned from the war, he had a short career with the railroad in Gary, Indiana. But the lure of the fishing of the waters in Sarasota brought Walt back, and he and his young son, Tom, once again returned to the family's commercial fishing business. Tom and Walt opened a small fish market in downtown Sarasota. Even as a young boy, Tom was always the entrepreneur. He started frying fish sandwiches in a portable sunbeam fryer, and he sold them in front of the market. Customers had to box up their own sandwiches. Well, business flourished beyond all expectations, and in 1961, Walt, using a loan from his GI Bill, established the first Walt's Fish and Chips and Market in its new location on 6th Street and US 301. Walt and Tom continued to operate and grow Walt's Fish Market and restaurants until Walt's passing in 1981. Tom, like his dad before him, was also called to serve his country in 1966, the draft. When his tour was over, Tom returned to Sarasota, and Tom, like his dad, used his GI Bill loan to greatly expand Walt's. Over the years, Tom and Walt added several locations, including this location where we are today. After Walt's passing, the kids and I took a more active part in helping to run the family business. Under Tom's leadership, the family business continued to grow, and Walt's became a Sarasota institution. Sadly, we lost Tom in 2006 after a long, valiant fight against cancer. The family pulled together, and Brett, who had always shown the most interest in following in his dad's path, assumed ownership of Walt's in 2010. Since then, Brett has put his business degree from High Point University to good use. Entrepreneur like his dad, Brett has taken Walt's to even greater heights. As a proud mom, it's been wonderful for me to see Brett's success and put his own mark on the Walt's tradition of serving Sarasota for 100 years. Now let's meet the kids.
Hey, I'm Brett Wallin, Walt's Fish Market Restaurant, fourth generation fishmonger. I'm going to talk to you today about our business that's been around 100 years here in Sarasota. When I was 5 years old, my brother was about 7, I really got the first vision of the fishing business, and I was at it sleeping. My dad came down to our room and shook me out of bed. I jumped up and he goes, "You're going to come unclear a gill net." And at that point, I didn't really know what a gill net was, but I knew it involved fishing. And I said, of course. So I got in the truck with my dad and my brother. We went down to the old Siesta Fish Market and cleared out a gill net. until it was time to go to school. Well, my dad, being a fish man, he didn't care if he smelled like fish. He said, well, your boys are going to school. So he dropped us off. We went to school, and I got called a smelly kid that day, and I came home to my dad, and he said, son, take a knee. And I said, Dad, I got made fun of today. I smelled like fish. And he goes, you tell that kid it smells like money to you. And so ever since then, I would smell money, and it didn't really smell like fish, but eventually I got the idea. And so then I knew I was in a soar in the fishing business. I went in high school. My brother and I worked daily, nightly to help grow the business. But I was always excited about the fishing. My dad was always telling the stories about my great-grandfather, my grandfather fishing all night. And I continued that, and I got my commercial license, pretty much right out of high school, and I still continue to fish for Walt's. And I always saw the bottom dollar of it, and my dad always said, if you don't have your customers, you don't have anything. And the customers being a huge part of Walt's in the community, you can't even put a Walt's shirt on anywhere in this nation and walk around without anybody saying anything to you. It's because, yeah, we have good food, we have good service. It's because we're a big community business. And that's what my father, Tom, always wanted to be, was a community thing for everyone to be a part of. And then, further on out of college, when I came back, I saw my dad. He was getting sick with cancer, and all I wanted to do was kick butt. And so my dad and I continued the business, growing it until he passed away in 2006. And then I looked at myself in the mirror again, and I said, I want to do more and more and more, and I did. And we grew the business up now with 110 strong employees. That is one of the reasons this business excels every year, because of our great service and our attitude our employees put in front of themselves and give it to the customers. So I appreciate all the years of coming to Walt's and supporting us. And by supporting Walt's, you support all the fishermen's family as well. So every time you see one of those fishermen, you pat them on the back, you say thanks. Because if it wasn't for the person with the boat and the rubber boots, there wouldn't be a Walt's.
Hello, my name is Tommy Wallin, and I'm here today to talk about my father, Tom Wallin. For those of you that know my dad, he was very good at living in the moment, but one of the qualities I admired most about him was his vision towards the future. Whether with his family or the fishing industry, he'd always wanted to make everything better going into the future. For the fishing industry, one of the main things that he could do to make us strive and thrive in the moment and then continue the success in the future was to make sure that he worked on the sustainment of the industry. So fishing industries can get diminished, they can get wiped out, but what he wanted to do was make sure that he could provide for future generations. So as a third generation fisherman, up until now, through my brother, now we've been in business for 100 years in Sarasota, and he wanted to make sure that could go well into the future. So part of my dad's personal responsibility, he joined the Florida Gulf Coast Council, and then later on was appointed to the National Marine Fisheries Council. And he did it as a commercial fisherman point of view, but he went in there with his local knowledge, and he wanted to learn more, because he realized that his current point of view it was not the whole picture, and to get the whole picture, you make better decisions. So I was lucky enough, I was in high school deciding where to go to college, and my dad figured it would be a good learning opportunity. So he took me to a lot of the meetings, whether it was in Florida, down in Key West, in Bradenton, or Louisiana. I got to see a lot. And when he went there, it was always the same thing. The scientific community viewed him at their first meeting as a commercial fisherman, and they weren't going to change his point of view. He was going to vote, he was going to have his one set of ideals, and that was it. And on the other side of the coin, the commercial fisherman realized, all right, here's our inside man. He's not going to care what the scientist says. He's in the fishing business. He wants to make money. We're here to harvest fish. That's what we're going to do. And that's totally not the mindset that my dad had. He used his practical knowledge, which was through 3 generations of growing up in the fishing industry. He knew that, but he also knew what he didn't know, and that was the scientific side of the fishing industry. So we met with a scientist. He learned what he didn't know to make better decisions. And I got to see that firsthand. We'd finish a lecture and he'd talk about something, and they were done for the day. And he's like, well, Tommy, I'm going to go. We're going to listen to the grass flat lecture, and then we're going to go listen to some guy talk about sponges for an hour. I was like, Dad, why are you going to do that? He's like, well, I don't know anything about sponges, and I know a little about grass flats and habitat, but not all I need to know to make the decisions. So we'd go and sit, and he'd learn from the scientists and the researchers and gain a little bit of extra nuggets. that would help to make a more level-headed decision. And he would apply that knowledge with what he knew to make laws or regulations that he thought would help provide for the betterment and sustainment of the fishing industry going forward into the future, so that the business is here for another 100 years, hopefully. So it was really neat to see him interact with commercial fishermen, with scientists, with political, with non-political groups. And through it all, he kept a level head, used his knowledge, the knowledge that he gained from listening to people that knew things that he didn't, to help make the decisions that would help better our environment and the fishing industries throughout the state of Florida.
Hi, my name's Megan Wallin Brockway. Welcome to the Walt's Fish Market Outpost. I'm the daughter to Tom and Linda Wallin, and the little big sister to Tommy and Brett Wallin. So as a Wallin, the family business and entrepreneur spirit runs in our veins. I remember my dad used to tell us, as long as you could see over the counter, you were old enough to work. Some of my fondest memories were working and hanging out with my dad at the 301 location. He taught us a lot about customer service. The customer is always right. I got to see him fillet fish, interact with the fishermen, and run a very successful business. When it came to field trips, Walt's Fish Market was always a classroom favorite. Who wouldn't want to see a shark or an alligator on the fillet table? In 2006, the Sarasota County passed a resolution designating Reef M2, which is about 5 to 6 miles offshore Longboat Key, as the official Tom Wallin Memorial Reef. I know my dad would have been pleased knowing his final resting place will help protect and provide for the marine environment for future generations. As a family, we met with Larry and George with Eternal Reefs to figure out how to create a living legacy. Our living legacy was going to be an artificial reef made out of reef balls. So what is a reef ball, and what do reef balls do? Reef balls have established themselves as the world's gold standard for artificial reef development and restoration. Reef balls are the perfect medium to allow microorganisms a place to land, burrow in, and mature and start to breed before predators can feed on them. Fish will migrate into the reef balls as soon as they are placed. Once these reef balls have matured, they are permanent additions to the marine environment. They will continue to develop and support the marine life forever. For the past 12 years, through the family business, Walt's Fish Market, the community and family, we've been raising funds for the Tom Wallin Memorial Reef. We'd like to say a special thank you to Chris Malcolm. He was vital in the part of getting Reef M2 named after Tom Wallin. We'd also like to thank our loyal customers, our Walt's employees, and the Sarasota community for making this living legacy a dream come true. 26th was such a special day for the Wallin family and Sarasota community. That day, we said a final farewell to Thomas Wayne Wallin, a beloved father, fisherman, and Sarasota iconic restaurant owner. It was a surreal moment as we dropped the final Thomas Wayne Wallin reef ball into the ocean. There was an unplanned but magical moment of silence as we all reflected on Tom's life. I can truly know that he'd be so proud knowing that his final resting place would be a place where we could all fish and enjoy. In total, we dropped over 61,000 pounds of reef augmentation materials to the reef. We hope one day you can visit the reef and visit the beauty of the ocean. We've put in a good word. You'll be sure to catch fish. And if you go diving, please say hi to Tom to us. There's a plaque identifying the Tom Wallin Memorial Reef.